it's just happening, and we all know it's happening, and not many people can put their finger on it, and not many people know what the causations are. One of the causations is that the British royal family has been flatlie royal since 1840. Flatlie royal means illegitimate, not allowed on the throne.
Charlie, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, Chris, and you?
Yes, every day I get happier and happier and more confused.
Look, it can be incredibly confusing because there's such a conflict of information out there. My journey started 6 years ago where I was told that this was going to happen, the collapsing of the world's economy. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, I thought it was a joke.
Mm.
And then 2 years ago, they told me that we're nearly there. We've got Trump in power, so we're nearly there. And now we've got him in power, we can do it. And then in December last year, they turned around and said, we've now got Boris in power in the UK and you're out of the EU, so we can now collapse the world's economy, including the Nazi states of Europe. And that was just a straightforward conversation, which I listened to. Did I believe it? Not really. But because I was like, really? How are you going to do that? And then suddenly 700 plus arrests were made from the boys that were using Encro that they thought was completely untouchable. And I said, there you go. What did I tell you?
Can you explain that for us, Charlie?
What, Encro?
Yeah.
It's basically an encrypted phone. It looks like a normal phone to any normal human being. But it was set up, it was created by a Dutch company, Dutch group. And the word on the street was it was for celebrities, so that they couldn't hack into their phones. The reality is it was 100% used by drug dealers, drug lords, hip men, etc., by naughty boys. And I'll be honest with you, I had one about 5 years ago, and I had a PGP, which is another type of encrypted phone. So you could communicate with people. My biggest concern was when I was moving money that I wasn't going to get jumped, because we've had two people who've been jumped because they've obviously somebody's heard the conversation. In fact, I was actually jumped myself in Oxford Street in London, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, so something like that. And then when I went, my daughter just happened to be, I was talking to my daughter on the phone when I got jumped. And she said there was something very strange about the way they were talking. So she contacted the police immediately. And the police said, we don't actually have any policemen on duty at the moment on Oxford Street, which was a very strange thing to hear as one of the busiest streets in London. But I got jumped by six people claiming to be police officers, and they weren't. That they'd obviously listened in on a conversation or something where on that particular day we were moving money around. And but when I say we are moving money around, I do the planning, and I've got teams who work for me who come from backgrounds like your own.
Okay.
Boys who I absolutely love.
If you want to move some down here, you're more than welcome, Charlie.
It's not my money, Chris. If it was, I would certainly do so. But yeah, that was the encrypted phones that the authorities, from what I understand from on the inside, they had accessed the information 4 years ago and have been tracking them for it, but they hadn't been able to put the pieces together till about 2 years ago. So these lads that thought they were invincible on these phones, everything was being recorded everywhere. But I've learned that in the last few years that you're not even safe talking face to face with people nowadays, because they've got drones with microphones they can drop from 300 meters on a fish wire right above your head, and you can't see it. It's just like a fly.
Yes, of course. It's a couple of my guests lately I've spoke to have said, if you knew the technology we had 30 years ago that was kept secret, then you wonder what they might have now, sort of thing. But my answer to everyone is easy, because it's all in here. If you want to know what's going on in the world, or you want a rough approximation why our language is changing, why these phrases that have come into play are there, why everything's been turned on its head. So stuff that's bad for you is now good for you. It's all in George Orwell or Eric Blair's 1984. It's incredibly frightening for those of us that read that book 20 or 30 years ago and thought, oh, it's just a book. And to see the totalitarian agenda come into play and to see the people begging for it. Should we start by talking about this Q phenomenon?
Yeah, by all means.
Not that we haven't started yet, Charlie, but what's your take?
Well, when I became aware of Q 2 years ago, and when I became aware of Q, I wanted to investigate what exactly it was and what were its roots and foundations. And I managed to trace it all the way back to 1962, when it was created. And that was as far as I could go to find out. And I've now since learned that there is ideas it might have started before that. But it was created by John F. Kennedy because he believed that they were trying to kill him. So he had a group of people that were confidants that he could trust with information to get it out there in case anything happened to him. And they worked inside the walls of the White House. Now, in America, they tend to have letters like Q and M and all this, whereas in England, we tend to have numbers, 007, whatever. And this was a group of people that he just trusted. Now, when he did get killed in 1963, they tried to get the message out, but every time they tried to get the truth out, one of them was killed. So they went to ground. And they went to ground for a number of years. They tried to raise their head in 2001 after September the 11th. And again, whoever was at the head of it was just disappeared, were never seen. So that I think they, from what I understand from inside information, they sort of regrouped but decided to keep very low profile. And then 4 years ago, they decided to make themselves aware, more visually aware. Now, the people that were putting out the information, which we now call Q drops, they were far more encrypted and far more geared for people like yourself with a military background that could decipher what they were actually putting. And my first sight into Q drops 2 years ago, I was like, whoa, what's that about? Because it was all codes and symbolism and numerology. I was like, wow. And you could see them matching up things that were saying. And then what actually got me was the fact that there was Q drops coming in. And then 2 days later, Trump was saying exactly what was in the Q drop 2 days ago. And then suddenly I woke up and went, there's something to this. And then it was pointed out to me as well on the journey that JFK's burial site in America is in the shape of a Q. And you can see that on Google Earth. Go onto Google Earth and type in JFK burial site, and it will take you to the burial site and you'll see the Q. The other interesting one that somebody brought to me the other day, Princess Diana's burial site is also in the shape of a Q.
Is that because
so
it's buried on an island?
That's right, with a lake around it with a Q in it.
There's some pretty weird stuff around Diana's death. On the one hand, on the one hand, what we had the media saying it was this paparazzi, right? Which I think we all know now. Anything the media says is just simply not. I mean, my ground rule, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, is I do not believe a single thing in the media because
No.
the media don't like me. They work for a sociopathic nutcase elite, a bunch of psychopaths that hate me and hate my family. So why are they going to tell me the truth in their media channels? That they're clearly not. And even if they do tell the truth, they wrap it in their own layer, their own delivery mechanism to suit their own agenda. But going back to Diana, it's just some interesting stuff when you get into the historical side. And Diana was a Greek, the goddess of hunting.
Yeah.
And when she had her and Charles had their wedding, their honeymoon, they had the photo shoot at the hunting lodge in one of their Scottish estates, right? Sorry, the name's
Balmoral.
Was it? Yeah, I think it was Balmoral, right? And in that picture, Diana has what appears to be a jumper with I might be wrong here, but it looks like the Egyptian hunting dog. Was it not Osiris, but I am sort of chucking a few 2 and 2s together here, and I'm not trying to come up with 4 or 5, but I'm just saying it all gets a bit, you know, when you think about the ritual sacrifice that a lot of these sociopaths are allegedly into, then it opens your eyes up to a parallel world, Charlie. Would you agree?
Totally. Like, I'm finding out stuff that I just could not believe to start with.
Oh, sorry, sir. That was the point I was making. And where she was buried on was it the Althorpe estate?
Yeah.
That island was where they buried their dogs.
Yeah.
Their pets, right?
Yeah.
I'm just making, and then in the car, the white Fiat Uno that was seen that came out of the junction, and that is what made the Mercedes have to make that first swerve, which then threw it off balance and it hurtled down the tunnel, you know, into the post at 80 mile an hour. The chap in the Uno, who they later traced to it was an immigrant.
That's right.
Had a dog in the passenger seat, right?
Yeah.
I'm just pointing these things. I mean, there's a whole lot of other weird stuff, that, like the fact that the ambulance took God knows how long to get to the hospital, and there's rumors, let's just call them rumors, that it stopped off on the way to the hospital, all this kind of thing. But yeah, going back to the Q thing, Charlie, there's just always so much more going on, isn't there?
Yeah. And the thing is like, I'm a bit like a naughty little boy that's been locked in his parents' bedroom, been locked down for 4 months now, pretty much. Like, I work in the Middle East, but I can't travel there. So I start looking in cupboards that I shouldn't look in, and looking in drawers that I shouldn't look in. I'm finding stuff I never thought was there. And I'll be honest with you, I'm absolutely loving it because it's saving my boredom. And I haven't turned my telly on. I turned it on the other day just to watch the football. But even the football without a crowd is a bit boring now. It's been an amazing journey, and I've learned so much about. Look, I started this journey 4 months ago with 37 subscribers. And for some reason, people have connected, and I went over 60,000 yesterday. I think it was on 60. I looked this morning, 62,000 or something. That's incredible for a 60-year-old granddad who's got no experience in presenting or anything. I'm just giving my view. Sorry?
I think, like me, Charlie, it's the devastating good looks.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. I was told the other day I've got a face that looks lived in, whatever that means.
Who by?
By somebody that was watching us. But like you and I, look, we've had some fun in our lives. We've had a roller coaster. I remember the days I had 15 years where thought I was sponsored by Dyson. I was just having, you know, in Porta Benus every night of my life, and it was an amazing time. In fact, that was the last time I was in hospital. I had 2 weeks on a bender with a group of girls that were over, and I was out all night, champagne, cocaine, and partying, and then working in the daytime, and I didn't go to bed for 2 weeks. And then when they all buggered off home, I was found unconscious and taken into hospital. Apparently, I'd ripped the shit out of the magnesium and calcium and everything in my body, and all the minerals were shot to pieces. And even that, I escaped after a week, and I was running down the road with my drip because they wouldn't let me out. I said, "No, I'm fine. Let me get back to normal life and let me look after my body." And 8 years ago, I turned from being a bit of a naughty boy to being a better behaved boy, because I got together about 9 years ago now with my wife, who's an international gymnast for many, many years, international in her own country and then in the circus for another 10 years. So she looks after her body. Her body's a temple. And she sort of gradually convinced me I need to look after mine. And your body's an amazing thing. Once you start looking after it, it'll look after you. And I've learned eating healthy food, and we eat everything is fresh in the house now. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, fresh everything. And it makes a massive difference. Eating good food. One point I'm going to make that you made earlier, which I loved about all these vaccines and stuff like that. In my little journey, one of my favorite pieces of information that I absolutely love is that if you get a lemon and make sure there's no wax on it, because all the modern lemons are covered in wax, but make sure it's an organic or a normal lemon without any protection on it, put it in the freezer, then grate it in the morning and put it on a salad or put it into something, just to eat it, 400 times stronger than chemotherapy for curing cancer. And then you start digging around doing a bit of research and you find out that Bill Gates tried to patent the lemon 10 years ago because he realized it was a threat to his vaccines. And you can't, I laughed for a whole day just thinking about the principle that he tried to patent a lemon. And I just came up with the theory, eat a lemon.
Yes, again, this goes back to what I was saying. Lemon and lime are the only two fruit that are alkalizing on the body. All the other fruit is loaded with sucrose, which is just another form of sugar. Sugar, obviously highly acidic, hence why it rots our teeth, right?
Yep.
Yes. Gosh, we're all getting there, but this is all stuff that's been hidden from us, Charlie, all of our lives. They tried to kill us, you know?
I agree with you totally, because a lemon doesn't cost anything.
I mean,
we
tried to kill ourselves as well, but you know, that's another.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. But if you lemon with water and bicarbonate of soda at night before you go to bed puts your body in an alkaline state, and it also means that the virus and cancers can't exist; they can't thrive.
Yeah. Now let's just talk about Boris, because I remember an interesting thing. I don't know if you clock this, Charlie, but this kind of Luciferian doctrine agenda seems to make people, it seems to give them little tasks that they've got to go and do if they want to, you know, get their permission in the pyramid.
Yeah.
And often it involves, there's a ritual humiliation, which is your celebrity breaking down in public or running onto a Oscars or a music ceremony and trying to grab the award off another, you know, another member, let's say.
Yeah.
And don't ask me why they do it. It's the same as that seem to make men, particularly black men, wear women's dresses on television and in a film. And if you think that sounds crazy, folks, just Google it and click images, and it's very bizarre, right?
Yeah.
But going back to this kind of humiliation thing, before that shooting in Las Vegas, which was a hotel, and the hotel was called the Mandalay Hotel, right?
Yep, that's right.
And I'm not making any claims here, because this isn't the platform to do so, but it was in the run-up, the few days before, that Boris was in Mandalay. It's Burma, isn't it?
Mandalay, yeah.
Yeah. He was there in Burma. So I'm just looking at my map.
Yeah.
He's there in Burma on an official visit, and he visited some sort of statue, I think it was, and he was there with the British ambassador. Again, sorry if I haven't got the specifics right. My memory's probably not what it used to be. But they're rocking up to this on this official engagement, and Boris starts reciting, is it the Kipling poem on the road to Mandalay?
Yeah.
Which, if I understand correctly, in this day and age would come across as quite British colonial racist, right?
Yeah.
And the ambassador goes, like, almost sort of nudges him in the elbows and goes, "Shut up," like that. And you see Boris go, do his usual. Yeah. Well, interesting, because again, part of the Luciferian agenda is you have to put out in public what you're going to do before you do it. So if you're going to commit a certain act on the public, you have to put it in their faces first.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can't do it. I don't know what happens if someone challenges that act, whether that means they can't go ahead with their power play. But anyway, so there was a couple of things going on there. One, it could have been pure coincidence. Of course it could, right? Mm-hmm. Two, it could have been this humiliation, like this humiliation thing. I'm just coming up with ideas. I'm not saying this is what I believe, right?
Sure. No.
Three, it could have been the putting it in plain sight thing that I've just talked about.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, what happens to Boris the next year, or when becomes Prime Minister of the UK, like his little pat on the head reward, right? But then of course, going back, relating it back to the Q, there's another possibility, is that he was kind of giving a bit of a warning there, right?
Yeah.
Chucking a clue out for the masses.
It's all fascinating, and I love talking to somebody like yourself who has a military mind, because I would have overlooked that until somebody points out and you go, yeah, do you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And one thing that discussion between people like you and I is doing now is making sense of what's going on. And one thing I've learned with trying to make a puzzle, in the box that I've got probably the pieces of 3 or 4 puzzles. And some pieces seem as if they fit, but they're not right. Some pieces fit and they're upside down. So you need to get people with a clear mind and a clear perspective to make sure you've got the right picture. And that's what I'm trying to do by talking to everybody, is try and make out what the picture is. And it's incredibly difficult because of the smoke, the mirrors, the deceit, the fact that mainstream have an agenda and they have a mandate to stick to their story. It's difficult. With regard to Boris, I know that it was a critical part for him to be in power. And I've said in the whole conversation before, the day we start thinking our votes matter, it's amazing. Like for years, I've assisted in moving currency around the world to make sure that certain people get into power. It comes from certain countries. I never dreamt that that they had so much control over the UK and America as well. They told me 6 years ago they were going to get Trump into power before he was even in the running, really. That was all part of a master plan, and it's a military operation. And if I'm to believe them, they're ahead of the game right now. And that's come directly from somebody who I know.
Are we allowed to kind of outline who these people are without?
Yeah, he's an ambassador for the US, so he's of a good standing. I've known him for 12 years, maybe more. I say 12 years because of the fact that I've known him for a considerable amount of time before I met my wife. I said 12 years the other day, and the guy said, no, mate, we've known each other 19 years. I went, okay. But there's a period of life before I met my wife when the years sort of blended into one. So time was different in those days. But
Because we have to remember that JFK gave, you know, no disrespect, especially in the light of the current, you know, Black Lives Matter situation, no disrespect to Martin Luther King, but it was JFK that warned of the deeper, darker agenda, wasn't it? In his famous speech. It's so haunting, that speech, that I did wonder if it was faked, you know, whether it was some sort of voiceover somebody had done. But when he's talking about there are people amongst us that don't have I'm paraphrasing, but they don't have our best interests at heart. They work to their own agenda, you know.
that's something that I did some research on recently, because I was gobsmacked to find out that the people who funded Black Lives Matter is George Soros and the Clinton Foundation. I thought, well, they're not black. And then all the money that comes out of Black Lives Matter goes to the Joe Biden campaign. I went, I don't remember him being black either. And it starts ringing alarm bells. Why are they doing it? And then the other thing I dislike, every life matters. And the reality is, Chris, I've traveled all over the world like you have. There's not one black lad I don't like. In fact, the only black lads I don't like work in government mainly. But every normal human being I get on great with, whether they're Indian, whether they're black, whether they're Chinese, Japanese, Russian. Doesn't matter to me. They're just human beings. I don't see the colour as being an issue. And on the odd occasion, I'll get some black guy that's got, and they normally come from England, born in England. They've got a big chip on their shoulder. And if they've got a big chip on their shoulder, I just point out and say, well, maybe you are right. Maybe you are different to me. I've got nothing against black people, nothing against any race of people in the world. And I've said it a few times as a joke. I said, if you want to look for all the naughty black people, they're nearly all in gangs. If you want to look for the naughty white people, they're all in Parliament.
Yes, it's just so obvious to the outside informed observer. This is order out of chaos, isn't it? You know,
It is.
Lock everybody up, then create an incident which ordinarily probably wouldn't have made the television. In the old days, it would have been hidden from the TV, you know. Thrust it out on all the mainstream channels and then watch everybody rip themselves to pieces. Again, the people that control the history control the future. So this is all the statues being ripped down. I'm not saying, you know, we got quite a few, well, we got at least 2 very famous slave traders come from Plymouth, right?
Yeah.
There's statues, there's even wine bars named after these guys. And I always think that's just like,
Are you in Plymouth?
how arrogant can you be to name your wine bar after the most prolific slave trader in the world? And that's what we had in Plymouth, right? And so, of course, nobody agrees with that. But we have to be careful because history is written by the winners anyway.
Sure. And
without going too deep into that, again, because of the platform we're on, people would be so surprised if they knew our real history and not this sham that we spout as if we're all freaking heroes, you know.
Exactly.
You'd understand how the power balance in the world is maintained.
Yeah.
And until we question that history and we ask for facts instead of just drama and name calling,
yeah,
you know, our children is their future's doomed. You know.
I'm going to mention one name that I've met in my life that was completely different as a person from what the mainstream media told us about to what he was as a man and as a human being. And I had the privilege of meeting him in Dubai, and that was Osama bin Laden.
Hmm.
I still know his family. The man is 6'7" tall, had a quiet, beautiful way about him, very humble, and just a very nice man. I mean, a really, really nice man. I was in shock after leaving his company. Number one, by his height, but number two, by his kindness and generosity of spirit as a man. Where you come from, your religion, the faith, that's all made to divide us. That again, I've had a number of debates in the Middle East because my wife is Muslim, I'm Christian. They were saying, "Oh, you can't marry her unless you're a Muslim." I said, "It doesn't say that in the Quran. It doesn't say it in the Bible. That's made up rules by man." And you see all these rules that are made up by man to divide. And when you and I grew up, we had Protestant fighting Catholic in Ireland. Same Bible, same God, different perspective. So I've got to kill you. What a load of bollocks. And then you've got the battle between Christian and Muslim, the battle between Sunni and Shia. All these different things, man-made creations, complete man-made creations. I don't believe in religion. I'll be brutally honest. I was born and brought up in a very strict cult, but I don't believe in it. I believe in faith. I believe in karma.
Mm. Yeah, I've been involved in some cults, not intentional. Well, you don't get into a cult intentionally,
No,
but
exactly.
when you see some of the structures, some of the very popular structures in our society actually work along the lines of, you know, if you get made to be afraid to leave an organization, that's a cult tactic, you know.
Yeah, it is.
You face mass, you know, mass public flogging by your peers for having a disagree, you know, having a different opinion. That's a cult, and that can't. If you think about that, then applies to quite a few institutions that we kind of laud. Yes, the whole Osama thing was interesting because, of course, while the events in New York were taking place, he was in the American hospital in, was it Dubai?
Yeah.
If the media was to be believed, I don't mean the mainstream now, I'm saying that it was in was it a magazine that he had very ill with I think it was kidney problems. Mm-hmm. And he was in the American hospital in Dubai being looked after. Mm-hmm. And then we had that situation where they had a no-fly zone after what I call what happened in New York. And yet amongst the first people allowed to leave was the Bin Laden family, was the if you believe your mainstream, the biggest suspects in the biggest atrocity of all of our modern times were allowed to just get on a plane and fly out the country. Anyway, I don't want to.
Well, they were business partners with the Bushes, then that's very public knowledge anyway.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, well, I've learned some wonderful things from the Islamic world, Charlie.
They're great people. There's good and bad in everything.
Yeah,
in everything.
It really is that situation where they give you, when you're traveling in these parts of the world, they give you their bed and they sleep on the floor, right? Be unheard of in the UK. Unheard of to take a complete stranger off the street with a different skin color, invite them into your home, feed them your best food, and these are places that don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, totally.
Then give them your bed and then tell them they're welcome back at any time and please stay, right?
Yeah.
Just another couple of silly things. We got a rule in our family: you never play with food. You either eat it or you don't. That's it, right?
Same.
And we do that, and I learned that from traveling in.
Exactly right.
I learned that traveling in the Middle East, because when food is a scarcity and it is a gift from God or nature or whatever your thing is, right? And there's children dying because they haven't got any of that food, and adults dying, starving to death. You don't be like, you see these TV programs and YouTube channels where they just lay out a whole banquet and then destroy it, and it all gets put in the bin.
It's wrong.
In our culture, we don't understand what a crime, you know, what an absolute crime that is to be smug, making a 2-minute blooming YouTube video and destroying all this food. Even like they wouldn't throw a, you know, when you say, Charlie, chuck us a bread roll, and we will just do that without thinking. They won't. They wouldn't do it. They respect life so much, right? And also, and we're not talking about it, you know, radical extremists here, of course. No. And the other thing is, you can be in the poorest village, say in Mozambique, which is an Islamic country. Yeah. And the kid, right, will get his bread roll out, and the first thing he does is break it in half and gives you half, right? I'm trying to get that adopted with my son, you know, that philosophy, but he's 5, but he's in this Western thing of break off the little breadcrumb and they are, Dad. So
now my wife is Muslim but non-practicing. Her mother lives with us, is Muslim but practices, and just to keep her company, because she looks after our house. You know, I'm very blessed. You know, all the food is provided, and it's stunning food. And my wife's originally from Turkey. That's why when you did the interview with Robbie, she fell in love, because Robbie's wife is a percentage Turkish as well. So he loved that. So with regard to the food, everything's provided in the house. She looks after us, but I also, instead of her being alone during Ramadan, eating at night alone and eating early hours of the morning, I'm a bit like you. I love the mornings. So I'd get up in the morning and at 4 o'clock in the morning and have breakfast with her. And I'd try and do Ramadan. But then my wife stopped me after a week because I was an absolutely grumpy so-and-so, because I wasn't getting enough food. But I was trying to do it out of respect and to keep her company. But I still did it, but I ate in the day, but discreetly. But it was important to show respect. And I think this is something that we all need to learn right now. With every culture in the world and every color in the world, is the word respect for the other human beings that are out there. It doesn't matter what religion they are, it doesn't matter what color they are. You know, with respect, white people, the minute the sun comes out, try and look black, and black people try and look white, as Michael Jackson taught us. But so we're just all human beings, and once we learn to respect each other on that level, and don't play into the narrative that's going on out there, the political narrative, to divide us, which then makes us easier to control. Divide and rule, divide and conquer. Because if we all rose up together against the government, they'd be in trouble. So if we're divided, it makes us easier to manage.
Yeah, I think we need to elucidate on our terminology here, though, mate, because government, full stop, puppets for the sociopathic, rich bloodline families that have been controlling the narratives for thousands, you know, going back to the pyramids, right? Back in their day, they used to sacrifice people, and that would keep the population terrified, and they would, you know, and they would control through their false religion, you know, their religious leaders that would come up with this Mickey Mouse story, and the people would kind of believe it. And not a lot has changed there with respect to you know, a lot of people's beliefs in the world. But yeah, it's above the government, Charlie, isn't it? It's understanding that they fulfill one role, that's to give you the illusion that you live in a democracy. And as George Carlin would say, you don't, and they don't like you, so get over it.
Yeah, exactly.
George Carlin, right? I read this quote the other day. It really made me chuckle. He said, if you think that the average man is not that smart, well, just think that 50% again are even more stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I will hold
Sure.
my hand up and say, you know, before the events in New York, I was that person. You know, I used to, I probably started questioning things just because I'd been through my sort of drug phase then, and I'd been in combat, and maybe, you know, all the seeds were sort of sown in my life to to be a thinker. But it really took that mass event for me to go, huh? What?
Yeah.
Hang
Yeah.
on a second. Someone's not telling the truth. And that was my kind of introduction to the rabbit hole, I suppose.
Yes. And I think also, again, I'm very privileged because of who I work with to actually know people who are actually involved in it. So, because they led me to it in the first place. And so this is our source of information. It's very interesting also that Donald Trump right now is setting up a very similar system based on Q, but instead of one outlet, he's actually going to have 7 outlets for information so that 7 different people can form their own opinion based on the facts. And that they're all digital media people in America. So people that have got a following, they will be given the information from within. So you'll have a choice of 7 different, because we can all say the same thing, but in a different way. We can understand it in a different way. So Q is becoming more modified now to give it more of a diverse action, I suppose is the word, where they'll put out the information instead of just to one source, they'll put it out to 7 different sources. It's a bit like TV channels. Instead of TV channels, it will go out to these digital warriors, as Trump calls them. And I'm in contact with one of them right now, that we're getting information from them as well as Q. But it's a lot easier to understand because it's not so, because there's not the risk of them being killed anymore like there was before.
When we're saying they, Charlie, I'm being told there's a focus on sort of high up military bods that are exposing this information, and is this what it's claimed?
The gentleman I speak to, I've done an interview with, and I've recorded the whole thing, but I've been asked not to publish it just yet. He was a pilot for the CIA from 1977 to 1980. And when he found out that every week when they were going backwards and forwards to Asia to America, when he found out they were transporting heroin and hashish at the time, he decided to leave because he wasn't comfortable with it. He decided to leave the CIA. But he was under the Official Secrets Act until 1999, 20 years. So in 1999, technically, he could have opened his mouth, but he realized that the Bushes, and then the Clintons, and then the Obamas were doing the same thing. So if he'd opened his mouth, he'd land up dead. And I was the first person that he spoke public to, and I have the recording, but I'm not allowed to use it as yet. He has to get permission to do so, because we covered a lot of areas that were incredible, absolutely incredible. You know, this man was a young man. He was 25 years old, 1977. He's now a lot older man. But interestingly enough, Trump has gone to these people, and he's one of them, and he is one of the advisors to Trump on the CIA that's left. And these are the people that are working together behind the scenes, putting the information together for Q. Because they can't get public.
Did you say it was the pilot that was working for Trump, or another?
He is now working with Trump. Trump has gone to the people who left the CIA for unknown reasons, were giving honourable discharge, but obviously they couldn't say anything then. And Trump has gone to all of those and got them all to find out what was actually going on in the CIA. And he's got hard evidence because he's got people firsthand that were involved, but against their will or without knowing what they were transporting. Yeah, so they're now working with the Q organization to put put the information together. So yes, they're all military, nearly all military, all CIA operatives.
Yeah, for anyone wishing to learn more about this, my friend Sean Atwood has written books on this drug smuggling that they did in the Iran. It was all the interspliced with the Iran Contra affair, wasn't it? And the crack epidemic in which resulted. Basically, they flooded America with so much coke that coke lost its value. So they thought, right, how can we, up the stakes here? Let's turn it into crack cocaine, which they did, which then had this kind of addiction epidemic. And then they all managed to blame it on one poor, is it?
Yeah.
The guy whose name slips my mind now. He's got the nickname. They managed to blame the whole thing on one guy on the drug side, and Colonel Oliver North on. Say again?
Pablo Escobar.
No, it's Ricky Freeway.
Okay.
Something. It was allegedly, he's the guy that I think he warehoused a lot of the coke when it arrived in America, and he arranged for it to be, the chemist to turn it into crack, basically. But of course, he's just one guy in a massive, underground network. And as I said, they managed to put all the blame on him, and he went off to prison for a number of years. And of course, Colonel Oliver North on the government side. But yes. So going back to Q then, Sorry, Charlie, I didn't mean to.
That's right. No, that's good.
I love these chats because, no disrespect, I won't say where I live, but I don't get to chat to fascinating people. No, I just don't. I don't know anyone that I can have this sort of conversation with. It's all on the internet, Charlie. And
sure.
And this is why I started my YouTube channel. Really, is I wanted to have chats like this. So sorry if it sounds like I'm talking a lot, but
no, I love it. I loved watching you. I became aware of you obviously with the Robbie interview, and I just loved the chemistry of seeing two men talk together with open hearts and honesty, and it's so refreshing against watching mainstream media to hear two people just talking. Because I used to love Piers Morgan, but the guy's got such a big mouth and talks over everybody. He's more wrapped up in how wonderful he is and the narrative now, rather than letting anybody talk.
Comes from a heart, Charlie.
Exactly. Well, I think that comes across. It comes across to everybody that it's pure, it's unedited, and it's real. And people are connecting with people like you and I because they're sick and tired of the bullshit.
Mm. Yeah.
And I've had this saying right from day one: if it looks like shit and it smells like shit, there's a fairly good chance it's shit.
Oh yeah, if it walks like a duck and it looks like a penguin, then it's probably a duck penguin. Yeah, that it's almost that some of it just seems so hard to believe, isn't it? I think anything's possible, so it's almost like it's not hard to believe. But if you just use your traditional head that you've had since you were, a baby, I think this is how part of the way they play the game, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Q is just a source of information that comes from within, without a shadow of a doubt. It's coming from within. And up until 2 months ago, it was far more encrypted. In fact, 2.5 months ago. And then suddenly I got a message from the man that I know saying, Charlie, we're past the critical point now. And then suddenly Q became a lot more easy to understand, which is interesting. Now the Q drops are pretty much laid out as to what's happening. You don't need a military brain to work them out. But Q's days are virtually at the end now. We're in the latter days of it, where Trump wants to have a number of sources of information coming out directly from him. And it's based on the theory that the mainstream media is not telling the truth. And he's always reverted to Twitter, which has really annoyed the mainstream media, because anything they say that's derogatory, he puts them right on Twitter and it comes straight from him. And the lovely thing with him is that, unlike me, I don't mind a gin and tonic at night. The guy doesn't drink, so he's not, or doesn't take a line, as far as I'm aware. But he just does it with a clear mind and puts such stuff out that is absolutely loaded. And I love what he's doing right now. And I think also there's a very important point here, Chris, that the left has got us into this identity politics, where we don't like his floppy hair and we don't like this. Let's look at what he's really done. Forget whether you like the look of him. Forget if he grabbed a woman by the pussy when he was 20 years ago. I've said things 100 times more worse than that. I promise you, when I've had a drink, I've said some horrible things. Not meaning it, just making silly comments, boys' comments. Look at what he's done. He hasn't gone to war against anybody since he's been in power, 4 years. First president in 30 years to do that. I don't care if he's only rescued one child and one woman from trafficking, but he hasn't. It's tens of thousands. He's rescued already from trafficking. And it's now beginning to leak out into the media what's happening about the people he's rescued. But it comes out in ridiculously small papers. The mainstream media is not publishing it. And then you suddenly notice in Holland, I don't know if you saw in Holland 2 days ago, they published that 30,000 paedophiles have been arrested in Holland and Germany. But it's in the Telegraph, but it's not on the mainstream television. And how many people nowadays really read a newspaper? The numbers are dropping rapidly, so they're putting it out in sort of, all right, the Telegraph will probably say to me, oh, we're a big newspaper. No, you're not considerate to the rest of the world news. You're not on the mainstream news. You're not cracking through mainstream news. You're just coming out in a 2-bob paper in Holland that'll be rolled up and made into a joint later on today.
See, my jury is out. It all sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Right? Sounds what a lot of us have been waiting for. But here's the thing. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Right? Q gives people power by the definition of they're doing this grand thing, putting this info into the public. If indeed it is a person, you know, if
it's a group.
But that by definition then empowers these individuals. I'm not claiming here, folks. I'm just talking because
I agree with you.
We live in a free freaking country and I'm allowed to talk, right?
Yep.
I'm not trying to put anybody down or say Q doesn't exist. I'm just like, if we can't discuss, then we're just going down someone else's narrative again. And that's what's got us to the problem where we are, right? Now, my questions would be, what is going to be done to the global financial system? The central banks, which keep us all slaves, the system of capitalism, which clearly is just destroying the planet, all for economic growth. Well, you can shove your economic growth, because I live in a beautiful part of the world. I don't want to keep seeing bloody McDonald's restaurants in the nature, right? And that's what we're getting here, right? Economic growth basically mean giving the capitalists what they want, right? So, and again, you've got people going after these pedos, and you know, I wholeheartedly obviously going to support that, right?
Yeah. Any
way that I can. But unless we're willing to address the root cause of why we've got so many in the world, particularly in power.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
Then stop, let's not delude ourselves. We have a serious problem with the way we do business as human beings, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's early days for whatever movement is going on, but I'm just trying to say, Charlie, for me, my jury is always out, because otherwise I'm just signing up for someone else's agenda, and that's the problem that's got us here in the first place, right? What are they talking? I mean, is Trump going to give up his towers and sign all his, sign over to doing a completely different way of business that doesn't absolutely corrupt every single person?
I don't know, but I'm very confident with what he's doing right now. And the one thing that he said that I hang on to is I'm going to give you back your God-given right of freedom, which has been taken from you. Now, going back to what you said earlier about power corrupting and absolute power corrupting absolutely, I think now is the time when people wake up, and we are in an awakening right now, that yes, he may be bringing us into a better place, but it's people like you and me that need to hold him accountable, that when we get to this better place, we stay in that better place and we don't slip back into or go from the frying pan into the fire. We need to keep focused on what he's doing. When I asked the question about this next election, because obviously we do a lot of work with the elections, I asked if he was going to be up against Joe Biden. And the answer came back, Charlie, this election will be like nothing you've ever seen before. And I said, well, will Trump still be in power? And they said that will be his choice. If the job has been done, he'll be given the choice as to whether to continue or not. Now, you and I know about friendship between men. And the minute that he got together with Putin, I could see them two being the best of mates, and they are. They are the best of mates. Because Putin has what Trump wants, and Trump has what Putin wants. Putin wants world domination, and Trump wants 85% support of his own people. So they're like two little boys trying to work out a plan, but they need people like you and I to hold them to account.
The Q thing does seem to be sort of America orientated, or is it just that I don't know enough about it?
No, Q is America orientated, but the alliance, which is behind Trump, is four main countries: America, Russia, China, and India. And when I say China, just be careful on the interpretation of that, because we're talking about Jinping, the president, whereas the government itself is the deep state, which is being removed right now and replaced as we speak with the republic.
And let me interject there. What are they going to do about this Khazarian mafia that seems to control the whole show? I mean, I've not heard any talk about, you know, who are the deep state, who is controlling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know the fringe of the deep state, obviously the tentacles in the intelligence agencies own all the media. You know, I get that. I've no doubt that they're involved in some dark agenda which permeates this deep layer, which is why they think on a different kind of level to the rest of us. But you know, I'm always very skeptical of, you know, I don't know what I want, Charlie, right? But these people JFK talked about, who are they? You know,
the deep state is a rebranding exercise, like Trump did with fake news from the word propaganda. Deep state, the old word for it before he came along, was Illuminati. And they're the people who run the world. So we're talking about heads of royal families. We're talking about heads of government. We're talking about CIA operatives. We're talking about NATO. We're talking about the people at the top of a number of charities. We're talking about people in power. If you're looking at the three pillars of the Illuminati or the deep state, the three main pillars are the Federal Reserve, the British royal family, and the Vatican.
Yeah.
So you have the money from the Federal Reserve and the Vatican, and you have the power. They're the three pillars of the Illuminati, or which is now called the deep state. And the tentacles come down from those three. Now, I know factually that the Pope was arrested and he's in house arrest. I know that as a fact, because one of my security guys who used to work with you is actually looking after him in his holiday home, along with a number of others. I know that 350...
Who,
sorry?
Charlie? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Who?
The Pope. He was arrested many weeks ago, many weeks ago. He's been in his summer residence under guard for a long time now, before Easter. And the speech was done from his house, not from the Vatican. Hence the cock up with the hologram that was done in the Vatican. There's been 350 members of the Vatican that have been arrested and taken away. And there has been a ridiculous amount of cash and gold taken out of the Vatican and documentation. The place has been completely emptied. And I know that from the sources that I deal with as to moving currency, because the guys that I use have been working with them to do that. And that's all been removed. So we know that as factual evidence. With regard to factual evidence to Buckingham Palace, the Queen has gone into voluntary quarantine indefinitely. What's that mean? Quarantine's 40 days. What does that mean? Is that house arrest, you mean? She's involuntary quarantine indefinitely. Just that doesn't make sense. And then you suddenly say Prince Andrew stepped down from main role, not hearing anything from Prince Charles. And then Harry and Meghan disappear in a hurry. And then Buckingham Palace is all boarded up. And we've had witnesses go there and tell us, Charlie, it is boarded up. And then the household cavalry are not there. You've got the Gurkhas and the Air Force who are manning it. That doesn't make sense. And then suddenly the crown is knocked off the gate. No, it's knocked off by a lorry. Chris, lorries don't go through the front gate of Buckingham Palace. Never have done, never will do. They always go in the tradesman's entrance.
I've been through the gate. I've been through the gate of the palace.
Yeah, but you deserve to. But you don't go in a lorry, did you?
No, I'm. It's a little joke, Charlie, because when we were Boy Scouts, I was 6 years old or something. We went on a week-long trip to London, and that's a big thing for us Southerners, right? And at one stage, they actually opened up that gate, the front gates that you see the ceremonial procession come out. And our bus drove in, parked in the parade square. And out we got, and we watched the changing of the guard or something, right?
Amazing.
I love the royal family. I love people being born into privilege and leading me because I'm useless. I'm just making that point because when you're a 5-year-old, 6-year-old Cub Scout, it was all quite special. When you're a 50-year-old angry old man, it's all a load of phony. But
I loved what John Cleese used to say. When you said that, made me laugh. John Cleese used to say, out of 1 million seamen, you were the one that survived. You were born a winner. So what you do with your life is up to you. If it goes wrong, it's your fault, nobody else's. You were born a winner. And what we've had to learn is what it is we have. We've all got something special, Chris. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we struggle to find what it is.
Yeah.
And everybody in this world.
I don't know how you get to that point, Charlie, because I'm there. I know I am because I'm a child of this universe. I'm made up of carbon molecules or whatever. That's all I am. And once you accept that, life doesn't have to become an awful lot simpler, right?
Also, you and I have hit the bottom before, haven't we?
Yeah. And I was asking someone this question the other day. Do you need to hit that rock bottom in order to springboard off and find this enlightenment? I don't know. I'd love to think you can impart as a parent to your offspring the right teachings for them to grow up with this. I don't know if you want to call it a Christ-like understanding of the world. But it's what you said. Our ancestors are we are miracles of evolution. Yeah. Our ancestors have been through famine, plague, scarcity, ice ages, right? Your DNA, when I did an 18-day water fast, right?
Okay.
That raised a few eyebrows, right? 18 days without food's nothing. You can do 40, right? I think Bobby Sands did something like 57 in his protest.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not suggesting we'll do water fasts here or anything, but the point is, the reason we can do that is our ancestors would have had to have been able to do that to get through periods of scarcity, right? All this stuff again has been hidden, but for us to still be here, sat having this conversation today, means all this is in our DNA.
Of course.
And yet we've been lied to and told, for example, you have to eat 3 times a day or you're going to be a bad human. You know, you're going to break down. So you can see now, hopefully through what I'm saying to our friends at home, why my jury's always going to be out on the whole political sphere, because while we've still got politics, it's never going to be good. While we're still pushing the capitalist system and the central banking system and the phony democracy, it ain't going to be good. I'm not saying it can't change gradually, but power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Politicians don't love you. They don't work for you. They work for these sociopaths. And until we start digging out these roots and re-educating people, I just can't see any positive change.
Well, maybe I can just share my positivity with you, because I've never felt as peaceful in my life and as restful as I am right now, ever, because of the fact that there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about publicly yet, that not only do I know, but I actually believe, because I'm seeing everything they've told me is happening. And if it continues the way it's going, then I should be very, very happy. But I'm watching like a hawk to see what's happening, because the jury's still out. And I've often said, and I'll say it again, I'm not the Messiah, I'm just Charlie. This is my view based on the information I've got. But for some reason, I've got a peace that I've never, ever had before. Knowing that good is actually overcoming evil. And it's a lovely feeling.
And I have that feeling too, Charlie. And we're not alone, are we? I'm speaking to a lot of people that are sensing this nice, like a buzz, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. Especially the spiritual people.
Yes. Oh, I mean, like the first thing when I chatted to Rob, he said, "You live in paradise and it's in your head." And I'm like, yes, it is. Correct. That's just what it is. It's not it's not a new age thing. It's not a throwaway line. It's I have to, because I was dying of addiction, and if I didn't sort it out, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be a good father for my son, right?
Sure.
So I'm not trying to be clever. I created paradise in my head. Through gratitude of this amazing planet, through love of all people, through utter acceptance of myself, right?
Yeah.
And you do those things, and plus you eat an alkaline diet. You try it, folks. You can't get unhappy. You know, I'm not saying I don't have challenging days. Had one yesterday actually, but while I'm in that challenge, I'm still the most grateful person, knowing that it's just it's all just temporary. So I completely agree, Charlie. But my question would be, it's all well and good being the spiritual guy and putting out this positive white energy into the universe, right? And this seems to be a lot of what the Bible says. But could that just be a game to get people, to move people into inaction?
I just go with how I feel inside. And I've got people around me that I can recalibrate my moral compass with. And that's important to have, because our moral compass has been out of sync. And I think you have to trust what's inside you. And sometimes you have to go back to a childlike state to get back to your compass as to where is right and where is wrong. One example that I use a lot is if you leave in a boat from New York and you're only 1 degree out and you're heading to Ireland. when you arrive across the Atlantic, you're not in Ireland, you're not even in England, you're in France. By 1 degree out. And when you leave, it doesn't seem like you're a long way out. And when your compasses can be a little bit out to start with, don't feel anything. Then suddenly, a few years down the line, you're so far away from where you should be at, you've got to reset it. And it's a good thing to reset your compass with friends. Friends who have I have a number of good friends who have a good moral compass. And they help me recalibrate mine so that when I look at situations, I make intelligent, informed choices, because there are many different perspectives on the same thing. And when you do that, go on.
No, you finish.
When you do that, you get a certain peace because you look at it with the correct view. It's like looking at the Mediterranean out of my window here and looking at it as a diver from 20 meters below, same body of water. Different perspective, understand the different perspective, understand the truth. When you understand truth, then everything else becomes so much clearer. If you're in a muddy puddle looking around, the more you look around, the more muddier it gets and the worse it gets.
Yes. How do we get on top of our egos?
Get married. Your wife will keep you right in order, especially if she's from Turkey. She just stuck her head in the door just now. I always tease her. I say, you're 95% perfect, 5% terrorist. It's the 5% I love. She keeps my ego. When I met her, my ego was always, Charlie Big Bananas. It always was, because I had deep pockets. She's made me humble, and also I think when I lost my son, my oldest son, in a car accident, that was a great leveler. And God blessed me with my wife, who came along 8-9 years ago with a 2-year-old boy. I didn't make him, but I didn't nature him. I nurtured him, and I've been very blessed. And I think you need to understand what we do have rather than what we don't have. Interesting, you made a comment about having a bad day yesterday. I had a bad day yesterday. I had to go up to the cemetery to find out that the grave that my son was buried in had collapsed, and that's a very emotional moment. I have to deal with that and put things right. And it throws all kinds of emotions into you, which are distressing, painful, not nice, just not nice. Seeing the grounds collapse. He's been down there for 11 years, so it's a reality that coffins collapse. Not a nice experience. But we all have tests, and it's how we deal with that test that makes us as a man, and that helps to reset your compass, that keeps you humble, keeps you very humble.
Yeah, it's a real good human quality, isn't it, to do what's right? It just is, and to that point where it's okay, if I die doing what's right, then that's how it has to be. Yeah. Jolly, we can talk about something else if you prefer, but how do you get over what you've been through? That's my only, I don't want to say fear, because it's not really a fear, but I'm very philosophical about death. We don't go anywhere. We can't, how can these molecules go anywhere? They're just going to go into different form of life, and the universe is beautiful. And I try to believe that we're universe first and we're these separate entities second. It's almost as if you had a rock talking to a rock, you'd think it was utterly ridiculous that rock thinks it's got a personality and it's individual. No, this rock, I've got person. It's like, no, dudes, you're just rocks. We're just, we're made out of exactly the same stuff those rocks are, right? So that's all well and good, but to go through what you've been through, do you have some sort of philosophy?
I think it's very much like a military soldier who loses an arm or a leg. You learn to live with it. You never get over it. You learn to live with it. And then what you have to do is realize what we actually do have, rather than focusing on what we don't have. I still have two sons, and I have a daughter. I have 3 grandsons. I have 1 granddaughter. I have a beautiful wife. I have a house. I have a roof over my head. You know, focus on what we do have rather than what we don't have. It's very easy to focus on what you've lost. And yes, it was very painful, very painful. It's not something you ever get over. It's not something you ever want to get over, I'll be honest with you. You just learn to live with it. And I always look back. I look back at, funny enough, a concert that I went to of Robbie Williams with my son. And we were invited to the after party with Robbie, and he didn't show up, which was a bit of a shame. He disappeared, and we'd heard from one of his security, he disappeared with Nicole Kidman. I thought, wow, what's he doing with her? Then a couple of weeks later, out came the song Something Stupid that he duetted with her. So that made a lot of sense then, but at the time I was like, oh, what do you have to go off with her for the night? I want to see, you know. That was just one of those moments. But that was, my son and I went to a number of concerts, which we used to thoroughly enjoy. As father and son, we had a great relationship, and I'll miss him because he was an absolute character, a very successful boy. Did very, very well, but lost his way with drugs, alcohol, and women, sadly. But, and then, you know, his accident, he had a car accident which took his life.
Your grandchildren, Charlie, are they his children, or is
one is, yeah, Alessandro, who lives in Boca Raton in Florida. He's his son, and Alessandro was 18 months old when his father, my firstborn son, was taken from us. And Alessandro is the most adorable child. My son would be so proud, so proud.
Does that give you like a fearless factor, Charlie, when we're talking about what we're talking about?
Yeah, 100%. I've got no fear of death, none whatsoever. No, that sometimes can be scary, Chris, because I think if you want to take my life, when I've had threats, I've had a number of threats, and I said, have a go, because if you do, then I'll just go and be with my oldest son. Quite simple. And I don't have any feeling of fear, and that was a bit scary at times when you get certain threats. But it's quite funny that when somebody threatens you to take your life and you go, doesn't really matter, suddenly the fear changes. It moves from me back to them, and they shit themselves. They go, I'm up against a psychopath here. And they walk away, and they're like, he's mad. Because this is something I've learned as well. The media control us by fear. The government control us by fear. And if you're not scared, like you and me, they don't quite know what to do with us, because we're supposed to be scared. And that scares them.
And the population, our fellow humans, control us by fear, Charlie, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
And it's sad to see. I mean, I come, as you know, I was in the service community. It was a long time ago now, but still get guys my age, when they come on my podcast, there's things they won't say because they're all worried what everyone else will think about them. And that's why these people have us by the balls, isn't it? You know, and
I had somebody ask me, was I worried about my reputation? At 60 years old, mate, that's the last thing on my mind is my reputation. All I'm doing is telling my truth. That's it. You like it, you don't like it, doesn't matter. For some reason, from 37 subscribers to over 62,000, 63,000, it's unbelievable for me. Unbelievable. I can't even work it out, but I'm getting over 1,000 messages a day, and I'm struggling to cope with them, but it's 99% of them are lovely, and you'll get the odd troll come in, and even trolls, Robbie must have hundreds of trolls, thousands of trolls. All they try and do is try and discredit you, but they hide their identity. They try and make you scared, and it's like, it doesn't bother me one little bit. I think it's funny. I feel sorry for them. They obviously don't have a life.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really get trolled. I haven't got the subscribers you've got, but if anyone, my deal's really easy. Come on my podcast. If you want to come on my podcast,
Yeah.
everyone is welcome. If you think anything I say is disingenuous,
No, you can tell it's not. You can
come
tell you're a
on
straight.
my podcast and tell me what it is about me that's disingenuous, and I'm more than welcome, because
Sure.
because we need to stop this attacking people
Sure.
online, because it's a form of illness for all of us. You know,
It
it's
is.
not the way. It's not the way to do business. Is leaving a comment as an anonymous person, and then all that's doing is putting a negative energy out there, isn't it?
But they feed off it. They feed off it. They feed off fear. Like the governments, like the mainstream media, like the trolls, they're all the same. They all feed off making people scared. And the minute you try and front them up, they disappear. But I've decided that I'm not even going to bother feeding their fear. I'll just ignore them. I don't have the time. My time is dedicated to people that need my help and need to relay their fears, because I'll tell you for nothing, fear is a bigger killer than anything else that's going on right now.
Yeah, very much so. And let's close off. Let's talk about the can we say the new King of England? Is that
right? I want to get this very clear. With you probably know from my videos that I'm very good friends with Jack Kidd. He and I have been friends for a number of years. And whilst we were doing this investigation, he came along to me, and Jack is a lovely, lovely guy. And he said, Charlie, I think we need to investigate this guy, Gregory Hallett, Joseph Gregory Hallett. And I said, who is it? He said, he's claiming to be the new King John III of England. So I said, what? He said, yeah, that's what his claim is. He said, I think we need to investigate him. So I said, okay. So Jack made contact with him, and we arranged to do a chat. So we did a chat, and I said, look, from my point of view, I'm a bloke that's locked up. I want something to investigate, something to do to keep me occupied. So we did a bit of investigation. Then we found out there was something that made an awful lot of sense, but there was also a lot of bits that didn't. So we did an investigation. Then one of my other friends, David Mahoney, who's a film producer, he said to me, Charlie, he said, I like that story. He said, I'd love to do a documentary on it. I said, oh, why don't we plan to do that? So David Mahoney and Lee Dawson, who are both good friends of mine, they decided that they'd go over to England. I said, look, boys, this is new to me, but go and see if you can find out what's true. Find out the truth about what's going on, because this might be the biggest story in history, or it might be a complete load of bollocks. But go and have a find out. And I'm honest with everybody now. I'm an open book with this one. Is it true? Is it not true? There's certain things that make me think it is. There's certain things that make me think it's not. At the moment, I'm not even going to make up my mind until I've got all the facts. Then I can make it based on facts.
Can you give?
So they went over. Sorry.
For our friends at home, can you just give us a little soundbite about what we're talking about?
Well, Gregory Hallett believes he's had this calling because the one thing that in my research, when I checked, and most people know in the United Kingdom that the Queen and Prince Philip, as much as we love them, and I do, and I've never met them, but I have met Princess Anne, I thought the world of her. But as a royal family, I like them. But then you also find that they're not the most monogamous family in the world. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to work out that even with the Queen, I think Prince Andrew is Lord Porchester's son. And then you go back and you find out that Prince William is King Juan Carlos's son, and Prince Harry was James Hewitt's son. Is it conspiracy theory? Is it fact? I don't know. I wasn't there to witness it. But there's that theory. And then you can find out that Princess Anne was unfaithful with Mark Phillips. Prince Charles was unfaithful when he was with Diana, with Camilla. Prince Andrew was unfaithful with men and women, and Prince Edward was unfaithful as well. They're not the most faithful family, and you go back generations, you have to go back 350 years to find a monogamous generation, which is crazy. So the Queen, I think we all know that she came from the German line, but they changed their name from Saxon-Coburg to Windsor. And most people know Prince Philip was Greek. So that sort of all played into the process of, let's have a look at it. Let's have a little look and see what the truth is. So we sent a team over to try and investigate what the truth is. And then when they all started moving out and this sort of thing, it sort of played into the narrative. Or was it coincidence? It might be coincidence, Chris. I don't know. I really don't know. I loved the Queen, and I think she's been one of the most monumental rocks the United Kingdom's had for a very long time. She's a person I looked up to as a leader, but was she the bloodline? Was she not? Is it supposed to be a bloodline? Is it spiritual? What is it? Do we need a royal family? I don't know. That I don't know. I like the idea. I'm a royalist. I like the idea. And I was speaking to a spiritualist yesterday who said to me that King John III, Gregory Hallett, is not the solution. He's part of the solution. And I thought that was interesting. So the jury's still out with me, Chris. And I'll be honest with you, whether he's king, queen, or not, I'll still be Charlie Ward at the end of it.
The world will still keep spinning, no doubt. Well,
but it's a lot of fun to investigate something like that, where somebody says to you, and they trust me to go into it like you would do, Chris. You're like me. Let's find out the facts. Let's find out the truth. Keep an open mind on the journey, because your mind's like a parachute. It's useless when it's closed. You and I wouldn't condone doing drugs at all now. But I tell you what, when you're off your tits, you get some amazing insights into stuff areas of your mind that you didn't know existed. And I remember finding out a very interesting fact that William Shakespeare used to enjoy cocaine years ago. And that gives you an insight into his ability to write so in the way he did. And that was in the days when it was legal.
That was why he was brilliant in Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah.
A funny little aside, but one of my brothers has just gone into business with William Shatner. I'm sure William Shatner's got lots of businesses, but the guy's like 80 years old now or something, right? And he's still sort of sharp as a button. Yes, you do. The old substance thing does make you question things, doesn't it? And analyze things and be party to certain extremes of emotion that get you to think of life in a way you perhaps didn't before.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Chris.
It has, mate. It has, yeah.
It's nice to have a couple of free thinkers just having a chat.
I think I'm free. Not free in this family though, mate. I'll tell you that. I'm under that one by a 5-year-old and a gorgeous girl, but I'm very happy about that.
Totally, I couldn't agree more.
So let's pick this up again soon, and see what unravels.
Love to, Chris. Been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, brilliant. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.